Welcome to Satluj TV News. You're watching the News Hour with Angus Scott in London. It's Wednesday, the 3rd of May. These are the main headlines from around the world. Last-minute truce manages to halt escalating rocket attacks and Israeli raids across Gaza overnight. The US edges closer to the financial brink as massive debt default looms. EU plans to produce over 1 million artillery shells this year to aid Ukraine's war effort. Multinational police operation makes huge drug and gun bust on the dark web. And getting the best seats for Saturday's coronation of King Charles. Welcome to the News Hour. These are today's main stories in detail. Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad announced a truce around Gaza today after militants traded fire with Israel following the death in Israeli custody of hunger striker Khader Adnan yesterday. One Palestinian was killed and 5 wounded in pre-dawn airstrikes Israel carried out in retaliation for rocket fire from Gaza. But mediators from Qatar, Egypt and the UN succeeded in brokering the truce effective 4 a.m. local time this morning. Adnan from Jenin in the occupied West Bank died early Tuesday after an 87-day hunger strike, following his arrest by Israel over ties to Islamic Jihad. His death prompted around 100 rockets fired by militant groups from Gaza towards Israel. In response, the Israeli army carried out a number of airstrikes on Gaza overnight, targeting weapons manufacturing sites, outposts, military complexes and an underground terror tunnel belonging to Hamas. The US has edged a step closer to the brink of defaulting on its debt. President Joe Biden, the Republicans and the US economy are on a disastrous collision course after the White House made clear it will not negotiate over extending the nation's debt limit. The government will run out of money and default on its debts as soon as June the 1st if there is no authorization for more borrowing. That would mean inability to pay for everything from social programs to the military. And in a cataclysmic blow to world financial markets, the national debt. The political game of chicken between the president and the Republicans is all the more significant as Biden announced that he will seek a second term in 2024. The EU will put forward a plan to boost production of artillery shells to 1 million a year as it scrambles to arm Ukraine and refill its own stocks. The €500 million plan will bolster ammunition production in the bloc and is the final ambitious step to help give Kyiv the firepower it needs to overcome the Kremlin's forces. Ukraine has been burning through thousands of shells a day and has complained that its troops have had to ration their usage due to these shortages. The EU has already pledged to spend €2 billion on providing 1 million artillery shells over the next year by raiding stockpiles and placing joint orders. This comes as 2 Russian trains were attacked, a suspected drone hit an oil depot in Crimea that caused a huge blaze, and power lines blown up near St. Petersburg. A multi-continental crackdown has halted a major dark web drugs marketplace, with international police arresting 288 suspects and recovering more than $55 million in cash and virtual currency. Operation Spectre, led by US, British, Brazilian and European law enforcement, also netted a ton of drugs and 117 firearms. In the operation, the illegal dark web marketplace Monopoly Market was seized and 288 suspects arrested for buying or selling drugs on the dark web. In a sign that governments are taking the potential threat to humanity seriously, the White House is to meet with top executives from Google, Microsoft, OpenAI and Anthropic tomorrow to discuss the promise and risks of artificial intelligence. Officials will discuss ways to ensure consumers benefit from AI, whilst being protected from its harms. Although US regulators have tried already to put the brakes on new technologies, such as ChatGPT, political infighting is stalling progress and allowing tech giants free rein, fueling fears that AI technology could shortly wreak havoc on society. A key AI developer quit Google yesterday, warning of its potential danger to humanity. India is facing a serious water crisis. Already one of the most water-stressed countries in the world, With plummeting water tables and increasingly erratic monsoon rains, its urban population is predicted to explode, with over 270 million more people forecast to live in its cities by 2040. But of the daily 72 billion litres of sewage generated in urban centres every day, over half remains untreated. Coupled with high volumes of industrial effluent, it's now causing disease, polluting India's waterways, killing wildlife and seeping into groundwater. More than 55,000 children under 5 died of diarrhoea across India in 2019. Experts are warning that the problem needs to be addressed soon, or a crisis is imminent. Myanmar's junta has pardoned more than 2,000 political prisoners to mark a Buddhist holiday today, with families rushing to prisons for tearful reunions with loved ones jailed in a sweeping crackdown on dissent. The military has arrested thousands of protesters and activists since the February 2021 putsch that ended Myanmar's brief democratic experiment and plunged the country into turmoil. Today's announcement comes as Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang is in the country for talks with the internationally isolated generals. The Pentagon has said it will deploy 1,500 troops to bolster security at the US-Mexico border, as a surge in migrant crossing attempts is expected when COVID-19 restrictions end on May the 11th. The strict Title 42 protocol was implemented by President Trump to deny entry to migrants and expel asylum seekers based on the COVID pandemic emergency. With its lifting, officials will now rely on Title 8 to deter undocumented migrants, which essentially criminalises illegal border crossings, making future legal residency impossible. New migrant processing centres are now being set up in Colombia, Guatemala, and even Canada and Spain. A report has warned that journalism is being battered by propaganda and increasingly sophisticated fakes aided by AI software, and a failure of oversight from tech companies. Overall, the environment for journalists was rated as bad in 70% of the 180 countries and good in just 8 countries. Norway and North Korea remain best and worst respectively for press freedom. The UN also warned yesterday that press freedom is under attack in every corner of the globe, with journalists continually harassed, jailed and even killed. They also warned that censorship has become the default position of many governments in terms of controlling the knowledge of their societies. And finally, with just days to go until the coronation of King Charles III, royal superfans are determined to camp for several days along the Mall in London to ensure front row seats. As hundreds of thousands are expected to gather in central London on Saturday in the hope of catching a glimpse of Charles and Camilla, the staunch royal fans are determined to hold on to some of the best viewing spots as the procession travels to Westminster Abbey and back. Camping out days in advance for royal occasions has become a regular feature in the UK, as is the weather, which is unfortunately expected to remain wet over the next few days. I do hope their tents are waterproof. You've been watching the News Hour on Satluj TV, and those were a few of today's main stories from around the world. Don't forget that you can send us your opinions and any thoughts that you may have on any of our news items to our email address, that's message@satlujtv.com, and we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, thanks for watching. For Satluj TV News, I'm Angus Scott in London.